Well, I had the privilege of meeting our next presenters through Susan Stephen at Living Science Wellness. And when I connected with them, it was just as though, it was like going home to people I felt I'd known for a long time. And we've been connected, and I feel very close to them, and I love that they want to change the world, and they do it in their own way. So you're going to have to remain with that open mind, open heart as we do this next part of our day. It's very important that you just be, and you're just present here. Your mind's going to want to wander, but we want to encourage you to stay present. You're going to learn a whole bunch of stuff, and you're going to have a great experience. Our next guests are not medical doctors. However, Dave Teed and Jean Wilmot are an engineer and a mathematician, respectively. They both understand the power we have to heal, and their mission is to help us with that. Don't be intimidated by the term quantum physics. Let your skeptic self take the day off and open your mind to learning about your power within. Please welcome Jean Wilmot and Dave Teed.
Do we need that mic? Thank you. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Can you hear me okay, or do I need an extra mic? We're really pleased to be here today. Yes, I thought so. So we're so pleased to be here today. It really is an honor. And it's a hard act to follow Brandon, but we're going to share the science behind what his story contains, because we want you to understand for yourself how you can access the power of your own body's ability to heal. So the 4 things we wanted to cover today: what quantum physics tells us about our ability to influence matter and our healing, and how energy healing is really an application of quantum physics. We want to demystify energy healing. It is quantum physics at work. And then we want to get into the incredible role that intention and emotions play in your ability to influence not only the matter around you, but your health and your body, and which emotional states are most powerful for your healing. And then finally, we're going to give you this group healing experience. So hold on to your seats. So first of all, we better define what quantum physics means. A lot of people throw the word around. Quantum physics is a branch of physics that was developed to explain the behavior of atomic and subatomic particles, because they don't behave the same way that larger particles do. Newtonian physics explains everything at the larger matter. When you drop a chair from a height, they know exactly what's going to happen. But with these smaller particles, they're not predictable. They appear and they disappear. They go backwards in time, and they do all sorts of strange things that you don't normally see. And that's what quantum physics is all about, is defining how these particles behave, or attempting to define. So when you look at large objects, they look solid, but when you zoom in with a microscope, you see that they're actually not that dense. When you get into the level of the atom, there's a huge space between the electron that's orbiting the nucleus. And it looks like it's empty, but it actually isn't empty. What's happening is the electron exists in a cloud of probability. It actually doesn't have a particular location. It's just existing in a cloud. And we'll get into more why this matters. And so this electron has an indefinite position, but when it's observed, it will take a particular location. And interestingly enough, the location it takes is dependent on where the observer is looking. So it responds to where our observation is directed. So on the left, you see the electron in that cloud of probability, and on the right, you see what happens after it's been observed. It collapses this cloud into a definite location. And you're saying, what does this have to do with anything? Well, we're getting there. So you probably all remember back in high school physics when we were looking at light, and there's the old discussion, is it a wave or is it a particle? And it turns out it's both. So when it's not observed, and if you take little tiny particles of light, like photons, and you shoot them through from this gun, and you put them through what's called the double slit, and then you project the results on that backboard. When it's not being observed, the pattern you get is like it's actually a wave. There's a wave interference pattern that's showing up on the backboard. And so here, the little particles are acting like waves. But as soon as we observe this little photons of light being shot from the gun through the double slit, we get a pattern that is no longer like waves, we get particles. And so as soon as the light's observed, we're seeing a different behavior. In other words, we're causing light to behave now like particles. And so we're changing its behavior just by observing it. And have you ever had that feeling that when you go to look at something, the price changes? That's exactly it. When we look at things, it does change what happens. And that's what our comic is all about. The price of the flight went up because we acknowledge its existence. So what we have so far is that humans have a direct ability to influence matter just by observing it. And now the question is, what do we do with that? Can we influence matter at a larger level, at the level of our body or of a chair? And the answer is we can. So scientists have done some studies with random number generators and asking people to have an intention to influence them. So left on their own, random number generators, which produce zeros and ones, over enough trials, they'll produce about an equal number of each. But when they had someone who was meditating with the intention of producing more zeros with the random number generator than ones, they actually do go non-random. They actually, statistically significant non-randomness. So we have someone here who's able to influence supposedly an object that should not be influenced, creating a different outcome. And what's even more interesting is the advanced meditators were able to create a much higher degree of non-randomness. They had such an influence that the probability that this non-randomness was due to chance was 1 in 10 billion billion. So I'm going to say, actually 10 billion billion billion, 3 billions there. That's the number on the bottom. So we can pretty much with great assurance say that it was these people meditating that are causing these random number generators to go non-random. So we're influencing things here at quite a larger level. So just to summarize, the deep meditative states are the ones that had the greatest influence and produced the greatest level of non-randomness. And now, just before you get all discouraged that you don't meditate and you won't be able to create any changes for yourself, don't despair. Even just positive emotions have a huge influence as well. Perhaps you've heard of Dr. Emoto. Has anyone heard of Dr. Emoto, this wonderful, Japanese researcher? So he wanted to look at, which waters are why healing waters, what are the properties that separate them from regular water? You've probably heard of people going to Lourdes in France to get healed. And so he went around the world gathering samples of water from all different locations and comparing them. He would take actually a sample and freeze it, and then take a little sliver off that and put it under a microscope. And he wanted to see what's the difference between waters that are healing and waters that are not. And what he found was that the healing waters, like the pure one you see here on the right, the Columbia Glacier water, had this beautiful crystalline pattern, just like a snowflake, very evenly formed and just beautiful to look at. And waters that were polluted or just regular tap water didn't have those properties. They were broken up and uneven, just like you see here on the left. So that seemed to be what distinguished the healing waters from those that weren't. And then he asked the question, well, what happens if we direct emotion towards water? So he took jars of distilled water and he projected emotions towards them. He had people either send the emotion through just by their intention or actually taping words on the jars. And interestingly, the water would change its structure. So on the left, when they directed "you fool" towards the water, it became fractured, just like the polluted water. But when they directed a positive emotion like "thank you," it became this wonderful crystalline pattern, just like the healing water. And so he carried on. He actually did thousands of pictures with all different types of emotions and effects, but it was very consistent. When there were emotions that were negative or derogatory, the water would become fractured, like this, "You make me sick." And when there was love and appreciation, there was these beautiful crystalline patterns, just like the healing waters. So when you think about the fact that the body is about 70% water, and when we're projecting an emotion towards ourselves or someone else, what a huge impact it has when we have those happy moments, or those, when we're harsher, what an impact it's having on ourselves or people around us. So already we're influencing matter at this higher level within our bodies and the water around us. So what happens if we put intention and emotion together? What kind of impacts can we have there? Well, there's a fellow called Dr. William Bankston, and he developed a method called he calls it the Bankston healing method, and he applied it to mice to see what would happen after he injected them with cancer. Would his method actually help the mice heal? And so here he is, this is Dr. Bankston himself, and he's actually holding a cage of mice, and he's practicing, or he's actually giving them an energy treatment with his particular method. And the data gets very interesting here, but first I'll tell you a little bit more about his method. So what he did was, he also wanted to see is this method teachable? So he took his grad students, and particularly the skeptical ones, the ones who didn't believe in energy work, and he trained them in his method. And then he basically, the method involves what he calls image cycling. So they're using a rapid visualization of images of the desired outcome, and both for the recipient, in other words, the mice, seeing the mice healed, as well as for the practitioner. So if the practitioner who's doing the energy work is looking to improve their lives, they include images from there as well. So new job, new car. And they practice this very rapidly while they're holding the mice. And what they're doing in these images is they're seeing it already having taken place. This is really key. So they're not hoping that it's going to happen. They're seeing it as if it already has. So he's done many trials beyond this. The first 5 double-blind clinical trials, they had one group of mice injected with a mammary cancer, another group as a control. And normally mice injected with cancer, they will die within 14 to 27 days because it's 100% fatal. And one group would receive the daily treatments for an hour of the energy work, and the other groups would not. And his success rate was 91.7% cure rate for these mice. And they went on to live their full lifespan of 2 years. So this is pretty incredible. Most people haven't heard of these double-blind clinical trials with this energy method. Now, and while 100% of the control groups off-site were dying. So is this all, I should just stop it. Is this all making sense for people so far? Excellent, great. So now we've got intention and emotion healing mice. What happens with humans? Well, there's something called the placebo effect that is essentially that. When someone has an intention of getting better and is feeling excited and joyful about it, things start to happen. And it turns out the placebo effect in itself is very powerful. Now, normally people don't know that they've been given a placebo. They just know they've been given a remedy and they believe in it and they're going to get cured. And what are the results that we see with that? Placebos actually perform so well in drug trials that they no longer, for many drugs, they no longer test them against placebos. They actually test drugs now against the older version of the drug because the placebos were doing so well. Yes. And just to take one class of drugs, antidepressants, placebos are just as effective as 81% of antidepressants. And this is across 5,000 trials with 35 clinical trials with 5,000 patients. So this is giving you an idea of just how powerful placebos can be, which is really using our own intention and belief to change our health and our state. And then they even went so far as to do sham arthroscopic surgery, knee surgery. They had two groups and they divided, some got the real surgeries on their knees and others didn't get any at all. They made little incisions to make them think that they had received the surgery. But the results were the same. 2 years later, those who'd had the sham surgery were pain-free and mobile, just like the ones who actually received the surgery. So now we ask, can we recreate the placebo effect just by using information? So we don't, the previous ones were pills or surgeries. Can we just recreate this by giving people information? And the answer is we can. They've done several studies. One was with maids, hotel maids. They divided them into two groups. And one group was told about the importance of daily exercise. And the other group of maids was told not only about the importance of exercise, but the fact that the work that they did exceeded guidelines for daily exercise. So now this one group is realizing what they do really counts. Well, in less than a month, the group that knew that what they were doing was exercise, they lost 2 pounds, they lowered their blood pressure, and their body fat as well, just by knowing. So no other variable has been changed here. And another study, they had people focusing on increasing muscle mass. So one group went to the gym 3 times a week to work out to increase muscle mass. The other group just sat at home and visualized working out. And you're gonna like this. They increased their muscle mass 24%, almost as much as the group that went to the gym. So yeah, just visualizing it. So now you're maybe reevaluating if you need that gym membership, aren't you? Yeah. And the final one, they took men in their 70s and they took them to an off-site retreat for a week. And this retreat was furnished in all the old style furnishings from 20 years ago, and they had old movies and music, and they told them just to reminisce about the good old times. Well, the changes in these men after 1 week were incredible. Some had arrived, with a walker. They had trouble getting around. They couldn't lift their suitcases. At the end of the week, they were playing touch football. They had improvements in their vision, their dexterity, their memory, their cognition, you name it. Just about every measurement of health had increased significantly just by imagining that they were, 20 years ago. Powerful stuff. So, how do we apply this to our own health? Well, there's a researcher and chiropractor called Dr. Dispenza, who's been doing exactly this with large groups of people, showing them how to recreate their health by visualizing the outcome that they're looking for while meditating, and doing this extensively for, regularly for days on end. And the changes he's seeing are absolutely incredible. Things like paralysis reversed. They've had people get up out of wheelchairs. They've had tumors disappearing. They've had Parkinson's symptoms disappearing as well. You name it, he's seeing all sorts of results. And this is just from people meditating and visualizing with an elevated emotion. Once again, there's that emotion piece as well as the intention, feeling the gratitude, feeling the joy of an outcome before it's actually occurred. And just to give you, he's got lots of data, but I just thought I'd share one chart. This is a Parkinson's client that had come for his sessions. You can see the brain scan on the left, which shows brain activity at different frequencies. The blue is 3 standard deviations below normal, which is what you see in Parkinson's. The brain is not operating properly. After just a few months, and after meditation, the brain has reverted to a much more normal scan where you're seeing activity in all areas as you would expect. So this looks like a normal person now. And that's just one example. So what states are most effective in producing these amazing healing results? And it really is It's calm, emotional, centered states that produce the greatest influence on our bodies. They call these coherent states, where our heart and our brain and our body are all in synchrony, and there's an even heart rate variability going on. This is where our greatest point of power is. And of course, the key is focusing on the desired outcome, not the problem, which is so hard to do when we're feeling sick or ill. But when you can start visualizing how you would like it to be, this starts to change the trajectory. And then when you couple it with these elevated emotions, such as joy, happiness, gratitude, then you're even creating a greater change. I like to call this getting coherence. When we get into these beautiful states, all things are possible. So you can accomplish as much in a hammock as you can by pushing yourself to the very edge. So we've seen what can happen just with individual intention and emotion being focused on an outcome. What happens when we get a group of people holding an intention for someone? And it turns out the results are even stronger. Some of the things that have come out from these group intention experiments, they see long-standing health issues healed. And not only do the receivers of these intentions see changes, but the ones doing the sending of the intention see results too. So this is a good thing to know. And they can even create changes in communities. Some studies involved groups focusing on reducing violent crime and seeing significant reductions in violent crime in an entire city. So never underestimate the power of a group of people with good intentions. And to follow this up, there's a woman called Lynn McTaggart. She's a journalist and a researcher, and she's conducted studies with thousands of people as well, holding intention for particular individuals, and has seen all sorts of changes. Receivers have experienced things like post-traumatic stress disorder disappearing, second-degree burns healing in record time, heart defects going away, you name it, she has also recorded it. And she also kept track of what the experiences of the senders were, and nearly 1/5 of them reported changes in their health as well. Anxiety disappearing, hip pain going, sciatica, so many different changes for them. And then she also measured their brain activity and saw that the brain waves of the senders holding the intention matched those of the meditating monks. In this case, it was gamma waves. So we're seeing a pattern here with these deep states or meditation creating change. So now, coming back to how do we use all this for ourselves and to change our own health? And it boils down to being able to access the quantum field, that field of all possibility, just like the electrons existed in a cloud of probability. What we're doing when we're focusing on a different outcome is we are going to that quantum field and choosing a new outcome for ourselves through that intention and holding the emotion of it. And getting into a calm, coherent state is a key piece. So whether we meditate or we just do this image cycling or get into a joyous place, whatever works for you. And then we recreate the emotion of it already having happened. This is really key, to feel like it's already occurred and hold that emotion, that joy, that it's already there even before it's arrived. And the key thing to keep in mind when you're practicing these approaches is it takes time and it takes repetition. So don't give up when if you give this a try, don't give up after a week. It takes daily or at least regular repetition and practice. Some people in these stories who've gotten up out of the wheelchair, it's taken them a year or two. So we need to carry on and have faith that it's working, even when we can't yet see the results. And working with others is a powerful way to up the impact. If you have a group that can help hold the intention that you have, that's a fantastic thing to do. And you'll see the results magnified. So Dave and I this is really what we do when we work with clients. We have a form of energy healing that we use with people that we find to be very powerful. And essentially, we're holding the intention for people to be in a healed state. And the results can be tremendous, especially when the client is holding that intention as well. That's when things get really fascinating. So what we'd like to do now is to give you an experience of this intention and energy healing approach as a group. And what we're going to do is I will read out a guided journey for you to participate in, and Dave will be working on the group energy field as a whole. And before we start the meditation, I'm just going to invite you to think of something in your life that you might want to change, something that might have been a challenge or an issue or a health problem, and just notice where in your body you might feel it. And on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is very uncomfortable and 1 is you hardly notice, just give it a rating on that scale of 1 to 10. And we're going to ask you about this afterwards so that you can notice any changes that might occur. So I'm just going to invite you to close your eyes and take some nice deep breaths. So continue to take those nice deep breaths and just feel the tightness in your body releasing. And feel yourself connecting to the earth. You can imagine you have tree roots growing down from the bottom of your feet all the way down into the earth.
Parallel to Jean's for me was that my wife became ill with cancer, so I had to put a pause on that to go with that, and through that I'm not sure I can call it a gift, right? But that process was the positive that came from it was that I became aware of the energies involved in helping someone in that place, and that remains a focus of what we do today.